Connect MKE, Conversations on Race is sponsored by U.S. Bank, the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, and the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission. Welcome to Connect MKE, Conversations on Race. Our ongoing series explores Milwaukee community issues and introduces us to the people working for diversity, inclusion, greater awareness, and ways to make our community better. I'm your host, Denise Calloway. In this episode, we cover a wide range of topics, like how a blood research company is expanding in an effort to better serve the community, how the Greater Milwaukee Urban League is introducing young people to new career paths, how a Milwaukee Commission is taking a public health approach to reducing violence, and we visit with a veteran Milwaukee TV journalist to learn more about her new documentary that is already earning acclaim. But first, we visit with U.S. Bank and Secure Futures to see how they're partnering to strengthen and empower young people through financial literacy. Stay with us. There's a saying in financial planning circles, you can work for your money or you can make your money work for you. Sound advice, but how do you make your money work for you, and when do you learn how to do that? You can never start too early, according to our next guest from Secure Futures and one of their longtime partners, U.S. Bank. Secure Futures is a nonprofit organization that helps empower young people to make strong financial decisions by providing the financial literacy programs they need. It's advice that not only helps students, but their families as well. We are pleased to be here at U.S. Bank with Brenda Campbell, who is President and CEO of Secure Futures, and also with Nina Johnson. She is the Senior Vice President, Wisconsin Branch Banking Market Leader, and she is also a member of the Secure Future Advisory Board. Thanks so much for letting us be here, Nina.
Thank you.
One of the things that we do know is that young people just don't have the financial information that they need to have. It can get them into trouble a little bit later in life. And Wisconsin does not have a requirement for young people to take any kind of financial literacy course. Is that part of the reason that Secure Futures got started, to fill that gap?
Absolutely, that's it. You nailed it, because we started in 2006, and at that time, there were thousands of students across the state of Wisconsin graduating without a clue how to manage money. And that was when our founder, Lloyd Levine, stepped in and said, you know, we need to change that. We need to do something to bring that financial education to students. And that was really the start. He, at that time, was working as a mortgage broker, and he was frustrated with having to turn family after family away because they didn't have the credit score or the savings to really be able to afford a home.
At what age does Secure Futures begin to work with young people to give them that knowledge?
Yeah, we think that there is a sweet spot in financial education, and that's 16 to 18 years old, because you're catching them before they've made mistakes, but while everything we teach is relevant to them. And relevancy is very critical in financial education. So if you can imagine, a 16-year-old might be in their very first job earning money for the first time. If they don't yet have a bank account, they're thinking about it. Credit cards are right around the corner. So we're catching them when everything is relevant to them and they know that they want this information.
Nina, you've also been very involved almost from the beginning with Secure Futures. What kind of support is offered? Is it one-on-one, group settings, a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both, and you know, it's been an honor to watch the growth of Secure Futures going back 17 years. It's just been a great moment in time to say, okay, this organization was able to come up with something that was timely for our kids right before they graduated from high school, but it's definitely one experience that could be happening in a group setting and or individual. You know, one of the things that I believe is one of the best benefits of Secure Futures is the connection connection between the student and the leaders of Fortune 500 companies that are going in to not only teach financial education, but also mentor to prepare them for their future after they graduate from high school. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits that I don't know if it was part of the plan initially, but it turned out to be a winning solution at the end of the experience once it was launched and students came back to us and said, you know what, this really mattered because this person spent quality time helping me to prepare for my future.
So what kind of experiences do young people have? What are they learning, whether it's in a group setting or one-on-one? What information are they taking away?
Yes, Secure Futures offers 3 different programs for students. So our first program, called Money Sense, is the one we launched in 2006. It is foundational financial education, most often delivered by a business community volunteer in a high school classroom. Nina was actually one of our very first volunteers 17 years ago when she was just 20 years old. And typically it's that volunteer going into the classroom 6 times, and they're teaching kids about budgeting, saving, how banking works, and how credit works. Then our Money Coach program, which was launched about 10 years ago, is very much focused on students who are coming from historically marginalized and under-resourced neighborhoods. And that program is a combination of small group and one-on-one mentoring that really helps take those basic concepts and help the student, by personalizing a plan, help the student put that into action. So they will begin to develop habits about, how they spend money, banking, how they plan to use credit in the future. And that's very much a hands-on program. And then our third program, called Money Path, was launched just a few years ago. And Money Path is unique in that it is a web-based application that connects the dots between a student's post-high school plan, whether that's going directly in the workforce, college, military, or skilled trades, and their financial future. And it gives them an opportunity to really get a glimpse of what the future looks like and put the dollars and cents to it. So very much a broad program where we are trying to serve students not just in Wisconsin, but even beyond.
What are some of the practical things that students learn in these classes?
Yeah, well, I mentioned budgeting and saving, understanding how banking works. It really is getting to those basic financial foundational
So
concepts.
they, for example, they're putting together a budget. They're putting together a plan to save.
Yes, yes. And in Money Coach, we're working with students who, they're very likely opening up the first bank account ever, and they might even be the first in their family to be opening a bank account. So it's very hands-on there. They have an opportunity to earn a scholarship in the program, and that scholarship will be direct deposit into their account. So that the mentor that's working with them is, looking at their bank account and saying, let's look at what you spent in the last week, and let's talk about those decisions. So it's very much helping them to become smarter spenders, better savers, and, hopefully investors later on.
Right, and so one of the things that we know, unfortunately, we hear about it, we read about it all the time, is the whole issue around student financial debt for young people when they're in college because they haven't made those good decisions. What are some ways in which Secure Futures gets to that very key to specific point that can really cripple young people's financial futures?
Yes, that's where Money Path is such a powerful tool for students, because they'll actually go in the app and they'll plug in the career that they have in mind. If it requires college, they're going to plug in the college that they have in mind, and the app will pull from data sources. It'll show them what the starting salary is of that career. It'll show them what the cost of that specific college is, and then it'll actually calculate for them based on what they've saved or what they'll qualify for in financial aid or scholarships. It'll show them what their monthly payment will look like when they graduate. Then they go in and actually do a budget as if they're on the other side of those decisions. So we're giving them an opportunity to make an informed decision about where they're going to go, what career they're going to go into. And something that I think is so powerful about this is we found a data source that will pull the starting salary of that career. And oftentimes when students are doing career exploration, those tools will pull a median salary. Well, the student is making a decision about how much debt they're about to take on based on a salary they won't see until they're 40 years old. So having that starting salary is so key, and being able to put that into a budget where it's like, here's your monthly payment for your student loan. Now let's talk about housing and food and entertainment. And they can see like, okay, this looks like a reasonable plan for me. Or they could say, wait a second, the numbers aren't adding up, and you know, how am I supposed to live? Well, go back and rethink your plan. Maybe a less expensive college is a better choice for you. Maybe you should be working while you're in college. Maybe you should be applying for every scholarship you can right now, because now you can see the impact that that makes on your future. Such a powerful tool to, you know, really give students that opportunity to get a glimpse of their future.
It seems that, Nina, one of the things that that Secure Futures does with this programming is demystify money. It's not something that just shows up at your bank account every 2 weeks. It's not something you can just use your debit card to pull money out for. It demystifies money and maybe even puts some of the power back into the hands of young people.
I completely agree with that. You know, I think back to even our first program that Brenda shared, and we were just going to audit a class, which means that we were sitting on the sidelines watching students at a local high school experience the educational opportunity of what compound interest means to those of us who enjoy compound interest. And so in that class, one of the students just got up in the middle of class as soon as the light bulb went off, which happens all the time, and he comes over to us and he says, okay, I have a summer job and I have money. How do I invest this money like today? Like, he didn't even want to hear the rest of the curriculum, because as soon as he understood the impact that compound interest had on his budget, he thought, gee, I need to get in front of this right away at 16. So just knowing that light bulb goes off in every classroom that's experienced the Secure Futures curriculum, and our students are responding not only with the current level of understanding that's being taught in the schools, but then post-curriculum experience with longitudinal studies, which Brenda could easily share. I mean, knowing that our students are walking away with that level of empowerment is indeed a game changer for our kids. So it is a powerful moment for them, and our goal is to continue to expand it throughout the state of Wisconsin.
But, you know, one of the things people always say is that you work hard for your money, so you should make sure that your money works hard for you. And that's something that Secure Futures is doing. So Nina and Brenda, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing this information and helping to empower the next generation of young people so their money works hard for them.
Thank you.
Secure Futures offers these programs free of charge for students, and for a small fee, families can also access the Money Path program to chart their financial futures. Learn more at securefutures.org. When we return, we'll visit with an organization that is saving lives with their research while providing jobs and being a valuable resource to the community. Versity is next. Welcome back. It's a worldwide leader in blood research that's improving healthcare, and it's right here in Milwaukee. Versity is located on the grounds of the Milwaukee County Regional Medical Center, but its impact is being felt around the world. Its research translates into improved treatments for blood cancers and disorders, including sickle cell anemia. Joining us today is Chris Miskell, President and CEO of Versity. Welcome, and thank you so much for being with us here today, Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Many people may know Versity for the important work it does supplying blood for hospitals here in southeastern Wisconsin. But Versity does so much more than supply blood.
Yeah, we take great pride in our expertise in all things blood. And there are 5 service lines that we have. The one that most folks know is our Varsity Blood Center of Wisconsin brand, which is collecting, processing, and distributing blood to hospitals across Southeast Wisconsin, actually every hospital across Southeast Wisconsin, so that they can take care of patients. But beyond that, we have specialized diagnostic testing. We have physician services and physicians that are seeing patients clinically. We have an organ and tissue procurement organization. And then I think maybe part of the discussion today is our research institute. So we think that we like to say that expertise in all things blood really sets us up and differentiates us from other blood organizations in the country.
Well, you are considered a blood research center. Just what does that mean? What does a blood research center do?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got about 28 scientists, and these are world-renowned scientists that have dedicated their lives to finding these answers to complex scientific problems in all things blood. About 80% of them are physician trained, as well as PhD trained, which means that then they can see patients on campus, because we're on campus in Tosa there with Children's and Frater. They also have professorships so that they teach at MCW. And so the integration on campus really helps the experience so that we're doing team-based science. Our researchers are focused on all things blood. So it could be anything from leukemia to bleeding and clotting to the safety of the blood supply. We have researchers that look at immunology in the blood, so the immune response that happens. Really, blood, as you all know, it touches everything. And so there's a lot of breadth to the scope of what our researchers do. But they are funded at the highest level from the NIH, which is the government. And so that funding allows them to do great work.
One of the things that's happening in communities of color is that we need to have folks who are in the system. So when someone needs a bone marrow transplant, for example, there are people who are in the system who are potential matches and potential donors. What kind of work are you doing to reach out to communities of color so folks can come into the system and work to help themselves and other people as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll answer that 2 ways. One of the areas that we support, the organ. So there are 56 federally designated plots of land, I'll call it, across the United States. Varsity has the one kind of in Southeast Wisconsin and kind of moving up into the central part of the state. And so ensuring that the organ donation process runs efficiently is something that we take great pride in, because folks are on the waiting list and need those organs. We have folks that are specifically focused on going into communities of color and doing education and kind of helping folks understand that in many cases, folks that look like us wait much longer. The need is higher and the wait is longer to get the organ that's necessary to save their lives. So we've got an entire team that's dedicated to kind of grassroots effort in the community to help with that.
And how is some of that work being done with some of the folks who are working at the grassroots level?
Right. Well, one of the things that I want to talk about is Varsity on King, which you may have heard a little bit about, because this is an area where as a leader in all things blood, we felt like we had a unique place to play here. And so essentially knowing that 1, not enough folks that look like us donate blood, and 2, not enough are on those organ tissue registries, we wanted to go from having a more transactional relationship to something that's more intentional. So we're putting it's a blood donation center, but it's also a community resource center on King Drive, and it's set to open in the first quarter of next year. And one of the things that we'll do there is first and foremost have a full-on presence where we're in the community, we're training a lot of our frontline staff that are collecting blood there, so that we're active and we're creating a hub and nexus of activity. But also we're doing education. We'll be hiring in the community. We'll be doing education around disorders that disproportionately impact people of color. And hopefully we'll be inspiring folks to understand that people need people. And in many cases, folks that look like us are more likely to provide that match that's so necessary for the patient on the other end.
In addition to perhaps that understanding, all of the work that you do around so many blood disorders and blood cancers. The other thing that people don't realize is just how big of a business Versity is. $400 million a year, that has a huge impact on the local economy.
It does. And we're a nonprofit mission-driven organization. So first and foremost, we're here for the community. And then obviously we're here to have a great experience for our employees. So, the organization started 76 years ago with science and medicine at the core. And it's grown over time across multiple states. About 1,000 employees work in the state of Wisconsin, 2,300 across our entire footprint, which is mostly Midwest with a small presence in Texas. And so we take pride in that economic impact, providing jobs for folks, but most importantly, doing mission-driven work that the community trusts us to uniquely do to save the lives that you love.
And you are getting ready to launch, you're in the midst of launching a big capital campaign, $65 million to expand. What will that allow you to do that you can't do with the current facility?
We're really excited about the expansion and the fact that the governor and the Joint Finance Commission saw the value in the scientific research that we're doing. So the expansion is about 65,000 square feet of space. It'll allow us to recruit more great scientists. It'll allow us to ensure that we've got the right equipment in the building. And then it'll also allow us to ensure that we're building a collaborative environment. Recruiting these scientists is it's high stakes because the good ones have a lot of options. And so for us to put a great front forward here in Milwaukee, which we're excited to do, I continue to build on our reputation. We need to make sure that we're competitive in what we're offering them, and that the space and the technology is first class. And so this expansion will allow us to do that.
You're leading this incredible organization that is doing so much good work. What advice would you give to other young men of color about what they need to do or what they can do to begin to position themselves for success, just as you've been so successful?
Well, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's a journey for all of us. I would probably say to folks three things. One, do the work. Two, find mentors. And then three, take on challenging roles and challenging assignments. And so maybe just a little bit more about that. I mean, I think that, on the do the work side, setting a really high bar and operating to your own cadence and your own expectation, setting a really high standard for who you are and what you want to be and what you want to contribute to this world, I think is first and foremost. You've got to find a passion and run your race. But then I'll just say I was really blessed to have a lot of mentors that if you solicit those relationships and you seek those out, people usually want to lean in and help you out. And so I think that for me, helping get direction from folks that have been down the path was really, really helpful. And then the last thing is hard assignments. Yes, not everyone, sometimes there are things that folks are willing to do and not willing to do. And I think that if you're willing to do the really take hard assignments that are challenging, long-term, those really pay off.
Well, Chris, continued success to you and everyone there at Versity. We look forward to seeing how you grow and seeing that impact continue even more.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the time.
Of course. Learn more about Versity, including how you can give blood during this critical time of the year and save a life, at versity.org. When we come back, we'll see how the Greater Milwaukee Urban League is introducing students to new career possibilities and how that can help improve diversity in the future. Welcome back. A diverse workforce is essential to a healthy economy, and STEAM-based careers are expanding rapidly. With only 23% of STEAM workers being people of color, the Greater Milwaukee Urban League holds an annual activity to connect students with STEAM professionals and participate in hands-on activities that open youth up to new career possibilities.
This has become our annual activity to bring our partner schools together to learn about the STEAM industry, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we have our business partners, organizations who have volunteered today to provide hands-on activities for our students. And our hope is that it will expose them to the different industries, the different jobs, the different professions that they can consider and actually match with their own talent, skills, and interests.
When I came here, I learned CPR from a fireman. The way we did CPR, we had to do our hands like this. We had to push hard, 2 inches deep, right in the middle part right here. And then we had to make sure our shoulders was right over it. And then we had to push down 2 inches deep.
As an organization, we are especially focused on communities of color, students of color. And what we know in STEAM is that 23% of those in STEAM are individuals of color. And there is definitely a need to increase that percentage. Those jobs are good paying jobs. Actually, many of them were the ones that lasted through COVID because they were specialty, jobs and needs. So, for our children to know more about that as they're planning the future, and that is our way to also increase diversity in the pipeline in STEAM.
I'm a foodie, so I'm going with the roll wraps because they were delicious. I actually loved it. The food was very good. I tore that up in like 3 bites, and I absolutely loved getting to touch the fox snakes and the box turtle.
First of all, they're outside the school, okay? Believe it or not, many children haven't even been to the zoo. So, part of what we do is also expose our children to different parts of the city and the county, places they may not have been. And so this is what makes it special. They're outside the classroom, new atmosphere, new landscape, an opportunity to interact with students from other schools, as well as meet people from the business community.
A lot of them, because I've been kind of floating to the different stations, and I'm noticing that our scholars are really engaged, like the CPR station from the fire department. It was fun watching some of the students actually perform the CPR motions and actually learn about the fact how that can save lives. And then I watched our kids at the Chef Artie station, and a lot of them had never been exposed to doing the whole spring rolls and wrapping and eating. It was fun watching them eat something. For some of them, it was something different that they had not had before.
And I think what this does is it helps to renew the spirit of our businesses and organizations that don't always interact with our children, and understand and realize once again, these children are like everyone else. They have dreams, they have hopes, they're excited, and let's really think about how we can support them for our future.
The fun one was the Smith, because he had the interactive station where they could watch how construction projects are done and how they look for safety, and listening to the kids identify different unsafe practices and be able to call it out and talk about why it was unsafe. As well as the medical college, some of the kids were really freaking out and having fun at the fact that they were looking at human parts, like the lungs and the heart. So, like I said, it's different. It's one thing when you're in school and you maybe talk about it or see it in a book. It's a whole nother thing when you can come and put your hands on it and touch it and actually see it and understand how it relates in the world.
They were able to meet other students, that they learned some things that they never knew about, that they had some hands-on activities that really made them think about their future, made them understand how important education is to their future, and just being, again, exposed in a different setting.
Each year, millions of individuals, families, and communities bear the physical, mental, and economic cost of violence. When we come back, we'll visit with the Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, whose aim is to stop violence before it starts through a public health approach. Crime is a major concern in the Milwaukee area. Some crime statistics are trending downward, but instances of violence, especially gun violence, continue to dominate the headlines, impacting residents' sense of security and safety. According to the most recent Community Health Needs Assessment for Milwaukee County, violence is one of the top health issues. The Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention has also taken a public health approach to the prevention of violence in our city. Its philosophy is that violence is a community-wide issue that can be resolved if governmental, nonprofit, and community organizations work together. Ashante Hamilton is the director of the Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what it means to approach violence from a public health point of view.
Well, the key to a public health approach is to recognize that violence is preventable, and that there are conditions in the community that infects people and spreads violence throughout the community. And so that there are approaches to stopping violence that can be systematic, predictable, that can help stop the spread of violence in the community.
The office was first organized in 2008. How has your work changed since that point of time?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of expansion in the office as to the type of activity that can be involved in violence prevention work. The office initially was primarily information gathering, report giving. Now there is a recognition of best practices around the country. There have been investments in violence interruption and intervention strategies that have been employed around the country. So, and we're doing a lot of that here in the city of Milwaukee. And a lot of that is being guided and led by the Office of Violence Prevention.
You mentioned violence interruption. What is that?
Yeah, so in many cases in the city of Milwaukee, we have a particular focus on gun violence, but we're looking at interpersonal violence as well as domestic violence in the community. And when those things happen, there are ways for us to get referrals from community members, from the police department, as well as hospital referrals that allow for trained people who have lived experience and some connection to the community, credible messengers, if you will, are trained to be able to build relationships with those people and primarily put a focus on stopping retaliatory violence, as well as helping that person heal from the violence that they experienced.
We are seeing some changes, some decrease in violence. You mentioned that gun violence is a particular problem that we have here in Milwaukee. Homicides are down for the first 6 months of 2023, but they're still at a rate that would outpace what we saw in terms of homicides back in 2019, prior to the pandemic. And non-fatal shootings are twice the rate of what they were in 2019. How do we begin to get this gun violence under control?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we've recognized just through our experience with this work is the tremendous amount of firearms that are floating around in the community. There's an unprecedented amount of firearms in the hands of younger and younger people. And we see with some of with the use of those firearms, that not only do we have easy access to them, but the capacity of the magazines, the clips that they're able to use with these firearms, give very irresponsible people the capacity to wreak havoc in a neighborhood that they just didn't have before. And so it's a very concerning trend to see this happening across the country. And it begs, the question that, do we need this many firearms in our community? And, I know that this is a national conversation about having some type of responsible gun legislation that we need to push nationally. But there's a lot of things that we should be able to do even locally from the state level to keep guns out of the hands of folks that are not prepared to use those weapons responsibly.
Are there specific things you want the legislature to do?
Well, one, limit capacity of magazines, and the ability to sell those legally would help. There's no reason to have military grade weapons floating around in neighborhoods. Limiting those would be helpful, and requiring people who are storing weapons, traveling with weapons in vehicles, to lock them would be helpful.
One thing that MPD is doing this summer, the Milwaukee Police Department, is really focusing in again on curfew for young people who are underage. How does this impact the ability to help keep youth safe this summer?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciate about MPD was the willingness to engage our office in structuring these, these types of efforts in the city. One of the things that I think that was a highlight for implementing the Summer Guardian program was to get parents to recognize their role in ensuring the safety of their children. I think too often we have passed off that responsibility to police officers, community-based organizations, and other entities for the responsibility of your children. And this was a community reminder that you too, parent, have a responsibility. There are supports that are out here. We want to be as accommodating and supportive as possible. We do recognize that some children, are not, following parental guidance. But there has to be an extra effort on behalf of parents to seek additional help in those types of situations.
What can we do now as citizens to help Milwaukee be a safer community?
Get in the game. I think that there is a number of things, volunteering, and participating in community groups where the goal is to get to know each other and take a sense of ownership in your neighborhood. So that's one. We're offering a number of community trainings, parental support seminars. We're helping people navigate the mental health system and take advantage of getting therapy and counseling, and recognizing when you have conflicts in your own family, to actually not just leave those unsettled, to actually go through a mediation or some type of de-escalation training, because that across the community we're offering, and we're making it easily accessible. So and take care of yourself. Recognize that you actually need to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. I think that there's a sense of responsibility that we need to take in making sure that we're healthy, so that we don't continue generational trauma that we're seeing a lot of people go through in our community.
There's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of good work that is being done. Ashanti Hamilton from the Office of Violence Prevention in the City of Milwaukee, thank you so much for being with us. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation.
Violence interrupters and credible messengers are important partners to break the chain of generational violence. Learn more about that program by visiting the Connect MKE YouTube page to watch our past feature about these programs. When we return, we'll visit with a Milwaukee veteran journalist turned filmmaker and learn about her new documentary that looks at segregation in the 1960s here in Wisconsin. Joanne Williams is next. Joanne Williams is one of Milwaukee's best-known journalists and a longtime news anchor. She's taken on a special project that has put her on the other side of the camera. It has also taken her on a journey that is more than 50 years in the making. Joanne produced a documentary that takes us back to 1966 and tells the story of a high school in Milwaukee, one in Kokona, and a controversial play, along with the state of race relations during the Civil Rights Movement. Joanne, welcome back to Connect MKE.
Thank you very much.
I love the story of how this documentary came to be, how you rediscovered this incident, this situation that happened back in 1966. Can you share that with us, please?
Well, I was cleaning out my garage one day, and I came across a box marked high school stuff. And everybody has a box like that. And I looked at it and I found a copy of my high school newspaper, the King's Page. And I was looking at it and I only saved one copy of my high school newspaper. And that was it. And on the front page, it said something like, King welcomes students from Kokona. And I said, I remember this exchange, and I looked at the date on the newspaper, and it was 1966. I came across this newspaper in 2016, and I said, oh, this was 50 years ago. I better do something about this. So that's how I got started.
What is the exchange? What is the story?
It's about a high school student exchange between Kokona High School up in the Fox River Valley of Wisconsin and Rufus King High School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A social studies teacher at Kokona wanted his students to have a broader view of the world. So to do that, he arranged an exchange of students between Rufus King High School and Kokona because he wanted them to perform a play. And the play he chose was In White America, which is the history of African Americans from slavery to civil rights. And in Kokona, there are no black people. So he came up with this exchange. He and another teacher, Bernie Hupperts, and Ruth Thomas, a black English teacher at Rufus King, came up with this idea of an exchange. And kids from King went up to Kokona, and they lived with families there for a month. And then the kids from Kokona came down to Milwaukee and lived with those families for a month, and they all did the play. So it was a 2-month exchange, and it all happened in 1966, as I say, right in the middle of the Civil Rights Movement. So I said to myself, this is a story, and I'm going to tell it.
What made the exchange a story that was worth telling? It's hard. Some people don't remember 1966 because they weren't born then. What made this such a remarkable time and the exchange of these high schools so different?
It wasn't just a short exchange like for a day or a weekend. It was a 2-month exchange, and it had a purpose. And the purpose was to tell was to perform the play. And the play had a purpose. The play was to tell the story of the history of African Americans in the United States and what it's like to be a Black man in white America. So that's what was important about the story itself. And I wanted people to know that this had happened because people didn't know it happened unless they were there. And as a matter of fact, one of the participants said when they did the play in '66 in Kaukauna, they just did it as sort of a presentation and that's it. Nothing else happened. But when we did the play again in 2016, then there were talkbacks and there were conversations. And he said that even in '66, they could have had that. But they felt that they saw this depiction of American history and then they just let it go. Well, when I realized that was the attitude they had then, and I knew there would be a different attitude 50 years later, that's when I knew it would be significant to tell this story.
How did people who participated in this talk about the impact it had on their lives? I mean, in 1966, this idea of this exchange and families that didn't really have any connection, having their kids spend a month in communities they didn't know anything about, that was a pretty big deal.
It was a pretty big deal. And it was pretty, they didn't know what to expect on either end. The white families didn't know what to expect of the Black students who would be coming there. And the Black families didn't know what to expect from the white students that would be coming to live with them. So it was a cultural exchange as much as it was an exchange to do the play. And I think they were quite courageous to do this. In 1966, Black and white folks had whole different points of view of the world, and things were going on in the world in the civil rights movement that had no impact in Kaukauna, but had a big impact in Milwaukee. In fact, in Kaukauna, some people had never seen Black people before at all, except on television. They'd never had any interactions with them. So it was a brave move on the part of the parents to let them go. And it was a brave move on the part of the kids to do it. They didn't know what to expect. But everything actually turned out all right.
And as young people, who were the folks who were then young people, as adults, how did they talk about the impact that taking part in this had on their lives? How did it change or shape their lives?
Well, several of them said that it changed their life. And it's something that they will never forget. Most of them went into service occupations. They became teachers and principals. And one of the participants got involved in a race relations organization in Louisiana, where he lives now. They said that it was, they didn't know what to expect when they went into each other's homes. But they learned what it was like to be the other person. They learned what their families were like. They learned that their families were very similar, even though they were different colors. And it had a huge impact on their life, and they remember it to this day.
What do you want people to take away from the film?
The film has a message of empathy, optimism, and hope. And if we can have empathy for each other, we can be optimistic, and there's hope. So that's my goal with this film.
Joanne, thanks so much for spending some time to talk to us about this. It is a remarkable journey that's 50 plus years in the making, and we wish you continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Connect MKE Conversations on Race. To rewatch and share these important stories, visit our YouTube page at youtube.com/connectmke. And as always, join us weekly for our discussions with local leaders and community members on Connect MKE each Saturday morning on My 24 and Sunday mornings on CW18. I'm your host, Denise Calloway. Thank you for joining me tonight for Connect MKE Conversations on Race. Special thanks to our sponsors, U.S. Bank, the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, and the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission.